So Rob Edwards is gone, and that means that Middlesbrough are now stepping up their search for a new head coach. I understand that sources behind the scenes at the club are now putting the work in to try and compile a shortlist to replace Rob Edwards as Middlesbrough's head coach. Now, of course, there's a couple of weeks before Middlesbrough's next match against Oxford United, but that doesn't mean that we've got time to waste. We do need to get out there and find a new boss to carry on the momentum that we've picked up over the first few months of this season. Of course, we're second in the table, a realistic chance of securing promotion this season if we can continue the form that we've started so far. And as a result, the names being linked to this job are really quite exciting. We're going to go through the contenders one by one to discuss what they would bring to Middlesbrough and how likely they are to get the Middlesbrough job. Let's go. Now, the first name on the list is Gary O'Neill. Gary O'Neill is someone who is a very familiar name and face to Middlesbrough supporters. He's done really well since moving into coaching. His first big break came with Bournemouth when he was appointed as interim boss for them, having been a coach there. He guided the club to survival in the Premier League, which was against all odds, and then ultimately, after being replaced by Andoni Iraola, he ultimately got the other job with Wolves at Molineux. Now, in his first season there, he got them to 14th in the Premier League, but was sacked last December to be replaced by Vitor Pereira. Of course, he was linked with the Wolves job last week before Rob Edwards ended up taking that position. Now, Gary O'Neill, out of work, on paper, would seem like a good fit for Middlesbrough. Of course, there is the big controversy around him as far as Middlesbrough are concerned, and that's because during his playing days, he appeared on a podcast and admitted to getting booked on purpose so that he could stay at home and watch the Masters. Now, obviously, that's not a good look for him. It's not a good look for supporters who really have been quite judgmental in their opinion on him, I guess. Middlesbrough's hierarchy are aware of that, and so any move for Gary O'Neill would be a bit of a gamble, given that it would mean some early hard work to win supporters over, but certainly in terms of his managerial credentials, he's someone who could do a really good job at Middlesbrough if appointed. Next name on the list of Middlesbrough targets is Steven Gerrard. Now, Steven Gerrard needs no introduction to people. He's a footballing legend, someone who captained Liverpool to plenty of trophies during his career there, a real English football legend. Now, of course, since moving into management, his reception has been a little bit mixed, I guess, which is, for me, probably a little bit harsh based on what he's actually achieved. He's out of work since leaving Al Ettifaq in Saudi Arabia in January, but previous to that, he won the Scottish Premiership title with Rangers during a 3-year spell in Glasgow. That may, to some people, be not that big an achievement, given that it's effectively a 2-horse race, but given Celtic's dominance, it was actually a really big achievement that he was able to get them to the title. He left there to join Aston Villa, finished 14th in the Premier League in his first season there, before being replaced by Unai Emery. Now, Steve Gibson does like a big name appointment. We've seen it previously with the likes of Michael Carrick. Obviously, in the past, we've seen it with people like Ita Karanka and Brian Robson and people like that. Now, Steven Gerrard would certainly fall into that category, so it could be an appealing option for Steve Gibson. He would be a manager that would be more in the mould of Michael Carrick than Rob Edwards, you've got to say. And of course, if he was to be named, he would likely bring in his own coaching staff. Whether he'd want to fit into Middlesbrough's structure of being the head coach rather than a manager remains to be seen, but certainly Steven Gerrard could be a name that seems to be gaining a little bit of traction on social media, and one which a lot of supporters feel could have some legs in it. Carlos Corberan's the next name on Middlesbrough's list. Now, he's a name which brings plenty of intrigue given his experience to date. Now, he first kind of came to prominence with Leeds United. He was an assistant coach under Marcelo Bielsa with Leeds when they got promoted from the Championship. Of course, they were leading a team which included the likes of Luke Ayling in there. Now, since then, he's left Leeds. He's gone on to form a career in management himself. He managed Huddersfield Town, got them into the playoffs, got them all the way to the playoff final where they were beaten by Nottingham Forest, so narrowly pipped to a place back in the Premier League. He then went on to manage West Bromwich Albion as well. Now, since then, he's gone on to go back home to Spain. He's currently manager at Valencia in La Liga, and last season he did a really good job of getting them out of the relegation zone and getting them into a safe mid-table position. This season's been a little bit trickier for them. Valencia are currently firmly in a relegation battle, and there is a lot of pressure building on Corberan's position, and there is a possibility that he could be sacked before too long. Now, Middlesbrough tend to be reluctant to pay compensation to get managers out of other clubs, but given that he could be sacked soon, it might be the case that if Middlesbrough are patient, they might have someone in Carlos Corberan who could be available to come in as the new head coach. He's got EFL experience, he's got experience at the top level, knows the Championship well, so he could be an interesting option if Middlesbrough are willing to be patient. A slightly left field option for Middlesbrough would be the appointment of Raphael Wicke. Now, he's been someone who has been linked by TalkSport. They're suggesting that he is on Middlesbrough's list of targets to be their new head coach, replacing Rob Edwards. Now, Ricky is he's out of work at the moment. His most recent role was with Young Boys in Switzerland. Of course, they played in the Champions League and the Europa League. A lot of people might have seen him in press conferences when they've been playing some of the big clubs in the Premier League, most notably Tottenham. Now, previous to that, he's also got a lot of experience in winning. He won the Swiss double with FC Basel, who of course Middlesbrough faced in the UEFA Cup way back in 2006. We've got a bit of history with them. He's also managed Chicago Fire in the MLS. Now, since then, since being out of work, Ricky's he's attracted a lot of interest, I guess, in his services. He was offered the job with Anderlecht and West Bromwich Albion, but turned both of them down. He is someone who's wanting to get back into management, but only if it's the right opportunity for him. Now, for those who don't know much about him, he is a coach who is renowned for youth development. He does like to develop players and get with them on the training ground. So for Middlesbrough, that could be really appealing because he would be a really good fit for Middlesbrough's structure, being a head coach, playing alongside, managing alongside Kieran Scott and, of course, Steve Gibson. Could be a really interesting appointment if Middlesbrough can convince him that they are the club to launch his career in the UK. Now, of course, since Rob Edwards was let go as Middlesbrough manager, I guess, since he went to Wolverhampton Wanderers, there's been all sorts of names doing the rounds for Middlesbrough in terms of who could potentially be that new head coach. Just to rattle through some of those names, we've got Alex Neil at Millwall, Brian Barry Murphy, who's with Cardiff City, Brendan Rodgers, he's just resigned from Celtic, even the likes of Michael Carrick, who only left Middlesbrough a few months ago, and Gareth Southgate, of course, the man who was Middlesbrough's captain, lifting the Carling Cup way back when, taking us all the way to the UEFA Cup final, and of course, most recently being England boss. These are all people who've been linked. They're all appearing in the bookies' odds for the position. Not too sure on any of them as to whether they're likely to get the position, but certainly drop into the comments below. Let me know what you think about these guys and whether you think that they could be a potential option. But the final option is one which would certainly appeal to a lot of people around Teesside. Of course, the final option we're talking about is Tony Mowbray. Now, Mowbray's someone who was, it wouldn't be the fashionable choice, I guess, to replace Rob Edwards, but I think given the nature of Edwards' exit, the feeling of supporters that he was disloyal to the club, he didn't really buy into the family nature of Middlesbrough Football Club, I think Tony Mowbray would undoubtedly right the wrongs of that. Of course, he's a Middlesbrough legend, former Middlesbrough captain. He managed the club between 2010 and 2013. Now, of course, that was a really difficult time for the club. Being in the Championship, there was a lot of cost-cutting going on, so it was very much about consolidation under then. So we perhaps didn't get to see the best of Tony Mowbray as Middlesbrough manager. So how perfect would it be for Mowbray to come back in, manage Middlesbrough, and maybe even try and get them promoted? Now, he's been mooted as a potential short-term option. Of course, if Middlesbrough were to decide to bring someone in until the end of the season, he could be someone to do that role. But of course, with Adi Vivesh currently on board, he's going to be sticking around at Middlesbrough. He led the team against Birmingham City as well. It might be that we don't need that short-term option with Adi being the person to lead the club in the short term. Now, Tony Mowbray is 61 years old. It remains to be seen whether he'd actually be interested in taking the Middlesbrough job. But certainly from a romantic point of view, you can see why supporters would be keen for Tony Mowbray to take charge, even if it is just on a short-term basis. So that's a little look at some of the names who've been linked with the Middlesbrough job. Of course, a lot of it is speculation at the moment. It hasn't really been a hard and fast shortlist that's been compiled just yet. We will have all of the updates right here on Bonkers for Boro for you, but I want to hear from you. Who would you like to see get the Middlesbrough head coach's role to replace Rob Edwards? Drop into the comments below. Let me know what you think. And if you have enjoyed this video, please do hit like, please do hit subscribe, and I will catch up with you next time.